I'm going to tell you guys what all the mainstream pundits are hesitating to say. Donald Trump will almost certainly be the Republican nominee. Now, he dominated in New Hampshire. He dominated in South Carolina. In Nevada, which is coming next, he has a comfortable lead. And most importantly, in 8 of the upcoming 11 states, the ones who decide on March 1st, Trump is winning. In 8 of 11. And in some of those states, he's dominating. It's a landslide against the other opponents, just like it was in South Carolina, for example, where his tremendous lead held. Now, nationally, when you average out all the polls, Trump still leads by 14 points. Now, that's not one poll. That's not a poll from a long time ago. That's the Real Clear Politics average. When you look at all of the respectable polling organizations, he's up by 14 points. So if John Kasich had this record, or Jeb Bush, or Scott Walker, or Marco Rubio, every pundit on TV would have already called the election. They would already say, look, this guy is just going to steamroll his way to the nomination. But when it comes to Donald Trump, they're hesitating because it's Donald Trump. Well, I'm not going to hesitate. I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that I now think the chance of Donald Trump being the nominee is 80%. You would need a minor miracle on the Republican side for Trump not to become the nominee. Because I don't see who's going to overtake him. I mean, now it's kind of a 3-person race now. Kasich has a very, very long shot chance, but it really comes down to Cruz, who I don't think is going to get the nomination, Rubio, who's the glitchiest of all of them, so he could easily flop, and Trump. And Trump's message seems to be resonating. So there are 3 facts that are most telling on this issue. Now, again, I've come to the conclusion that he has about an 80% chance of being the nominee based on what he's done so far, based on the numbers in the upcoming primaries and caucuses. So the numbers was a tremendous part of this. But there are other reasons as well. So first of all, he's bucking right-wing orthodoxy and he's saying populist things. Now, this is something none of the mainstream pundits have acknowledged. They just brush it off. They pay no attention to it. But they don't understand that this is the stuff that's resonating with blue-collar Republican voters. So when he goes out there and he says on free trade, yeah, no, I'm going to make American corporations stay in America and keep the jobs here. I'm going to stand up to China. I'm going to stand up to Mexico. He talks about this air conditioning company that just decided to move to Mexico. He said, what if I tax them 35%? To bring their goods back into the country if they send the factory to Mexico. How about that? Then they're going to stay here, right? So I'm going to force them to stay here. Blue-collar workers hear that and they go, oh, he might actually be looking out for me. Now, do I believe Trump? No, because Trump himself has his ties made in China, so he's a massive hypocrite. He could make them here. He doesn't want to make them here. So is he actually going to be on the side of the people? I doubt it. But can other people, analyze this objectively and say, hey, wait a second, you have shit built overseas, so you're probably not going to do it. No, they just hear what he's saying and they go, okay, I guess I believe the guy. So he's populist on free trade. He's populist on infrastructure. I remember when he was arguing with Jeb Bush in a recent debate, and he said, look at this guy. He wants to go into Syria, fight both sides in the Syrian civil war. Meanwhile, we got roads and bridges all crumbling and collapsing in front of us here. We shouldn't have done the Iraq war. We should have spent trillions of dollars here on our infrastructure. Guys, that's not even an up-in-the-air thing. It's a liberal position. But guess what? The Republican base likes it because everybody likes it. Go look at the polling data and you'll see that the American people, even Republicans, are somewhat leftist on economic issues. I mean, there was the Vox poll from recently which found that 55% of Tea Party voters want a political revolution to redistribute wealth from the rich to the middle class. So Trump comes along and he sprinkles in some genuine populism, some economic leftism, and the Republicans are like, I like that a lot. And meanwhile, the right-wing pundits are fucking baffled. They don't understand it. Even on healthcare, Trump keeps doubling down and saying, yeah, well, we can't have people dying in the street. That's stupid. Like, it's common sense to give people help when they're dying in the street. What are you going to do? Let them bleed out in the street? This isn't a Republican or Democrat thing. This is a heart thing. This is what he said in the last debate. Now, I get it. In the Republican pundit class and in the establishment, that is an unpopular position. Among the people, they're going to go, well, yeah, I mean, I'm a Republican, but this is, to me, that does seem like common sense. Would I want if I was laying in the street and I didn't have health insurance because I'm in between jobs, do I want no help whatsoever? So he's tapping into a populist nerve. And none of the mainstream pundits recognize this. So why is he doing so well? Gosh golly, I don't understand. Because he's doing that, and then you mix it with the classic right-wing xenophobia and bigotry, which Trump has poured on heavy. Whether it's saying, the Mexicans, they come here, they're rapists. I assume some of them are good people. Oh, the right-wing base eats that up. Mix that with Muslims. We need a temporary ban on Muslims coming into the U.S. In their mind, that's like a moderate thing. He didn't say permanent, he said temporary. So a temporary ban on all Muslims coming to the U.S. He's so reasonable. Bigotry, xenophobia, he's tapping into that nerve too. You don't get it, man. For the Republicans, that's a powerful message when you mix in economic populism with xenophobia and bigotry. They eat it up. They eat it all day long. Yum, 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 yum. All right, then the next thing is, dude, the Pope, he just got into a fight with the Pope. Now, to be fair, the Pope kind of started it more with him, but the Pope said, this guy's not a Christian. I'm declaring that this guy's not a Christian. And South Carolina, which is uber Christian, still went to vote for him overwhelmingly. Now, it's a fair counter-argument to say, well, they're not Catholic in South Carolina. That's true. They're not. They're more, evangelical. They're Protestant. But still, the Pope's word carries weight among all Christians, not just Catholics. So you could be a Protestant here. Okay, yeah, I like that's the closest thing to a leader we have on this earth. Now, I get it. This is a more left-leaning pope than previous popes, which is a good thing in my view. So they might brush aside as a result of that. But you have the dude who's supposed to be the representation of Jesus Christ, the one who's the medium to the space ferries on this earth, and he's like, that guy's not a Christian. And the overwhelmingly Christian voters of South Carolina go, agree to disagree. And they vote for him in a landslide over other people. If the Pope comes out against you, if you get in a feud with the Pope and you win, who the fuck's going to overcome you? You think fucking Marco Rubio, the glitchy Marco bot's going to somehow overcome you? And then finally, at the last debate, he repeatedly screamed that the towers came down under George W. Bush. And he called Bush a liar. He said he lied us into the Iraq War. And he still won the next primary anyway, in a gigantic landslide. Nobody else get away with that on the right-wing side. Nobody. Trump not only got away with it, it may have helped him. Anything this guy does, it's spun as something where he's strong, the others are weak. Even if they don't like it, Republican voters don't like it when he says something like that. They still voted for him. Ben Shapiro, of all people, who's a guy I despise. He's a loathsome dude. He's rarely said anything that's factually accurate. But he made a decent point after the last debate. If Trump can scream that the towers came down under Bush and he still wins the next primary, this thing is over. I kind of agree. I have him at 80% chance now of winning the nomination. And what people don't get is the Republican establishment is a paper tiger. They're not popular. You think the Republican establishment, people like Reince Priebus, politicians like Lindsey Graham and Jeb Bush, you think they're popular? No, nobody likes those guys. They're solely propped up by money. If it wasn't for the money that's propping up their ideas and their messages, and they're puppets to their donors, if it wasn't for that, nobody would vote for them. They have no appeal whatsoever. So as I said the other day, I'm beginning to question why any of us ever questioned how Trump would do versus these morons. Because the people he's against, none of them are genuinely popular. The RNC, the Republican establishment, is a joke. If the money dries up tomorrow, their entire operation collapses in on itself because nobody likes the shit that they say. So Trump is demonstrating that now. Soon as you give even the right-wing base a taste of genuine populism mixed with their xenophobia and their bigotry, they go, yes, I want that. Not the message of people like Reince Priebus and the Republican establishment who are openly against middle-class voters and poor people, and everything is geared towards the corporations and the rich. And then in conclusion, let me just say this real fast. This could be an epic disaster for the Democrats. Because if it comes down to Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, I think it's much more likely that Donald Trump wins the election. A lot of people are like, wait, what? How can you possibly say that? There's a new poll that came out this weekend. Donald Trump has a 3-point lead over Hillary Clinton in a general election. Now, you could say, well, hey, that's one poll. We got a long way to go. A lot of things can happen. That's within the margin of error. That's all true, okay? But when I analyze it and when I look at it and when I try to figure out how it would go down in the debates in the general election, you could just see that Trump would nonstop hammer Hillary Clinton over her Wall Street money. He would say, why are you taking money from Goldman Sachs? Why are you taking money from Wall Street? You're going to listen to them. You're going to be a puppet to them or else you wouldn't take the money. So you're going to listen to the big money interests. I'm not. I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm going to listen to the people. And he would hammer her and hammer her and hammer her. And she would be flopping around like a fish fresh out of water, not knowing how to respond, just like she is right now when Bernie does it. When Bernie calls her out on that, what does she do? Half the time she says, no, I'm just working within the system. I'm more centrist. I'm more moderate. I can get things done in a smart way. I'm for progress, but incremental progress. And then the other half the time she's like, no, I'm somehow more liberal than Bernie and further to the left, even though I'm taking the Wall Street cash. Which is it? You can't say half the time I'm more moderate and the other half the time I'm more liberal. That's a contradiction. That doesn't make any sense. So she doesn't know what she's doing. And when she's under that pressure from Trump, and also she's going to have the arrogant mood, she already has it against Bernie, where it's like, please, I'm entitled to this nomination, so everybody shut the fuck up. Like, oh, a little speed bump I have to get over here. This is what her mindset was against Bernie from the start. You think she's going to have that times 10 with Trump? Like, oh, I know the country's going to vote for me. I don't need to do anything. And she's going to fucking faceplant because she's going to underestimate him, and he's going to keep pointing out her corruption. And guess what? On that point, he'd be right. I might agree with Hillary a trillion times more on social issues. I do. I might even agree with her more on economic issues. I do. But on that issue alone, she can lose the election. And don't get me wrong, guys. Trump tried to be corrupt. He went to the same billionaires that all the Republicans go to and said, please fund my campaign. They said no. It was only after that he was like, yeah, I'm against this system where they're puppets. So he's a liar, okay? But that doesn't matter. In the general election, it's going to resonate when he keep saying that she's bought, I'm not. She's bought, I'm not. Now, if you don't go with Hillary, though, on the Democratic side, and you go with Bernie, what happens? Bernie wins. I'm not even entertaining the idea that Donald Trump beats Bernie Sanders. He will not beat him. The last poll that was done on them, Bernie had a 13-point lead in a general election over Donald Trump. And what do? You kneecap the one argument that would work against Hillary. What's he going to say to Bernie? You're bought. Nobody believes that. Nobody believes Bernie Sanders is bought because he's not bought. And Bernie can just hammer him on the issues because he actually knows shit about the issues. And he's actually really, really nuanced and detailed in his policy positions. So I'm telling you, man, as it's going right now, if the race were to end today and it's Hillary versus Trump, that's a disaster and Donald Trump would likely be our next president. But again, putting all that aside, Donald Trump, I have it at 80% that he will be the next Republican nominee.